So I think having a child with diabetes is one of the most stressful things that we have to deal with as a parent. We're constantly worrying about their sugars. Every minute it could be a different number. If they're high or they're low, who's watching them, who's taking care of them, how are they doing at school, how are they doing at home, especially if you're at work and you're not physically right next to them. Family members, even though they may, be supportive, they really don't have any idea what you really go through and what it means to have to count carbohydrates and wait how many minutes after insulin is given to be able to eat. It's tough. And reactions from other parents of non-diabetic kids or kids who don't have diabetes, 3 weeks into going into public school for the first time as a 4.5-year-old, we were invited to a birthday party. So I'm like, okay, this sounds great. Let's go try that out. And they had gymnastics, and then the other side of the room was chips, birthday cake, and some fruit. And I'm like, great, she can have whatever she wants. So I asked my daughter to tell me what she would like to eat. And I went ahead and checked her sugar, gave her a shot of insulin, and then I went to go stand in line to get her some more food. And one of the moms came up to me and she goes, I volunteer at school. I know your daughter has diabetes. And I'm sitting there going, okay, thank you for your concern. And then she goes, just to let you know, she's eating fruit right now. And I went, oh, that's okay. I already checked her sugar, gave her insulin. She can have fruit. I'm just getting her a piece of cake. And at that point, the other mom's face just went like, you are the worst mom in the whole wide world. And I don't know, like the feelings that went through me, I didn't know if I wanted to cry. I didn't know if I should just be angry, but she just didn't know, what was happening. And, but we got through the birthday party. My daughter had her cake and, and did fine and stuff. And subsequent birthday parties, I think the longer we were at the school, more parents would come up to me, and the ones who were interested were asking more detailed questions in terms of, how we care for my daughter. But it was tough.
I feel like we made a mistake in the beginning. We were advised to do an extremely low-carb diet, and I know there's a big part of the community that eats this way, and there's a big divide on do you feed your child normal, or if you're an adult, do you eat normally, or do you go to this low-carb diet? Because with lower carbs, it's less insulin, it's your blood sugars. I mean, yes, they are a little more even, but for Hayden as a 5-year-old, he immediately had to deal with being poked, prodded, insulin shots, finger pricks, being taken out of class to handle highs and lows. Then he had a different lunch than everybody else, which he didn't like. He didn't want to eat that. He wanted to eat what everybody else ate. And probably 6 months into eating like that, he rebelled so bad and was just angry, sad, was livid every time that we would give him a meal that was low carb. And he was miserable. And I feel so bad having done that to him, because I think that was more damaging in the shock and change in his life. It was everything now. Now his diet. He couldn't even have chips at school with his friends or cookies. So we went to his doctor and I said, look, this isn't working for us. He's miserable. We're miserable. And it's causing a huge divide in the family. And he's going through enough. Like, I've talked to other parents that are feeding their children normally, and their blood sugars are normal, and they're happy, and they're feeling included at school with their friends. So we started including more normal foods in his diet, and instantly we had a change in his attitude. Mm-hmm. He was positive. He was happy. He felt more normal. He wasn't made fun of at school for having just pickles and lunch meat. And for me, I think every family has to do what's best for them. And if that low-carb diet works well and your child responds well, good, that's great for you. Some kids don't react that way, and I think that's okay as well. You have to kind of figure out what works best for you. And I've found that being vocal about that has helped other families, because I felt this extreme pressure from people that I had even befriended in the community who were on this very low carb diet and kind of forced it on me. And like, if you don't do this, you're doing it wrong or you're harming your child. And for us, it was the opposite. So I think it's important to share with other people what works for you might not work for someone else, but you have to take into totality their mental health, their inclusivity at school, how they feel about everything.
My daughter was pretty compliant from 4 to, I would say she turned 9. So when she hit 9 years old in 3rd grade, she all of a sudden just woke up and said, wait a second, this is not fair. Why am I the only person at school with diabetes? I don't have any friends with diabetes. All true statements. And I think I was imagining that she would be a teenager when that started happening, but she was 9. And it got to the point where we would kind of carb count and put in front of her what we were going to feed her, give her insulin, and she would just refuse to eat the plate. She never refused prior to that, but all of a sudden she just like would not eat it. And it was dangerous because I was watching her sugars dropping because she was too big for me to force food into her mouth. And she didn't want the nighttime sticks either. So in terms of caring for my daughter, it got harder and trickier when it came to nighttime finger sticks too, because she was, this whole time we've still had highs and lows at night that needed to be treated. And she would clench her fists so tightly. And when she's 9, it was hard, it was impossible for me to pry her fingers open compared to when she was younger. And that went on for quite a while. I was there thinking, oh, maybe this will just be a phase that'll just go away in a couple weeks. But then that got to a month or two, to the point where my mother-in-law could not even properly feed her and check her sugars when I was at work. And because it actually got so dangerous for us, I actually took her to go see a psychologist at Children's Hospital to help us, get through this 9-year-old brain just saying, I've had it. I've had it with what you guys are doing to me. I want to be just like my friends who don't have diabetes. I want to eat anything that I want. I want to do anything that I want to. And she just wouldn't let us do the checking or the feeding and stuff. And I think what we learned out of all the sessions that we had was it was very validating for my daughter to hear that it was okay for her to be angry. It was okay for her to be different, than her friends. And regardless if she had diabetes or not diabetes, those friends would still be there. I guess is kind of what she had to figure out for herself. And regardless if she let us take care of her or not let us take care of her, her parents would still be there and still love her and want her to thrive, even though we know none of us are perfect. And so that was helpful. So after turning 10, maybe she's slightly more mature, but she's still a kid. And we have our good days and bad days, but I think it was necessary for her to hear that it was okay to be angry, and definitely it was not fair that she had diabetes.
How have you approached having any crucial conversations with your child that has diabetes?
In our household, my daughter with diabetes is the youngest. And so I think there is some normalcy in having to eventually talk about alcohol use and similar challenges that teenagers go through. We have chosen to be very open and honest about that. And sure enough, my daughter had her first experience with alcohol her sophomore year of high school, a little earlier than I thought she was going to have that. And we just sat down as a family and talked about what that meant in general, what that meant for somebody living with type 1 diabetes, and how there's extra precautions that go along with that. And we've continued that openness these years leading into college, and I think it's kept her safer. I mean, I really do. Kids are going to experiment. Kids are going to do a variety of things during these years. And for us, we just created an open line of communication where she could come to us and talk about what she was doing, what she was seeing at parties, so on and so forth. And so I think for us, that was really crucial. Something I'll probably always look back on as being one of those defining moments of raising a child, and especially raising a child with type 1 diabetes, is having to have that conversation and have that conversation be very frank and open. And again, I think she's benefited from it. I think my wife and I have benefited from it, because now we talk about what you don't know when you're away from your child with diabetes, and we don't know what she's doing all of the time. So we're hopeful that that open conversation kind of planted the seed to make the right decisions, and I think it has.
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying, Daren. We have a very open household and a great line of communication with our kids. And I think that's the key to getting them to talk about anything, whether you have diabetes or you don't. I think for us right now, it's she's 15 now, so as I was saying, it's menstrual cycles. Luckily, I have my wife deal with this conversation for the most part, but we have had to deal with it from the standpoint of high blood sugars and things like that. I think we have a European household, so we drink a little bit of tastings of wine, I would say. But she has a good example in her older sister, so I would anticipate we're going to have this conversation. But so far, it's been okay. And she doesn't really seem to have the desire, which is also good. But as Daren's mentioning, that does change at some point. But I would anticipate that we'd have a very frank and open conversation, particularly as it's about relating to her blood sugar and what she should do, what she shouldn't do, and things like that.
I anticipate many crucial conversations with my son as he goes into his teen years. Right now at 9, I wouldn't say we've had to have very many big monumental conversations in his adolescence about growing up, but I know they're coming, and I know his strong-willed self. we will find ourselves in these crucial moments. But I think so far the conversations we've had to have are more on taking his diabetes seriously, and as much as he wants to be just like everybody else and ignore his alarm that's going off, or just eat it and, oh, I forgot to bolus, and then not go back and bolus, that he has to pay attention to all of that. And I know it sucks, and I get it, and we feel you, but at the same time, it's your health, and you're going to have to do this. So if you want to take a day off, we handle everything. I mean, I handle mostly everything anyways, but there are some days when I just give him a full day off from complete, even thinking about diabetes, and I just handle it for him because I can tell he just needs a break. And I don't ask him his numbers. I just look at his pump and his continuous glucose monitor and just try to give him a little break, because I can tell the emotional toll on him is it's stressing him out. And as a 9-year-old, it's hard to see a kid stressed out. He shouldn't have to stress at that age. So I anticipate quite a few crucial conversations as he becomes a teen, wanting to get that stress out or relax and be just like all the rest of his friends that are out drinking at a party or whatever it might be. But for now, he's 9 and he's in my control, kind of. So.
Same for my just turned 10-year-old. It's probably still centered on just, there's some days where she's just tired of having diabetes and she's angry. And I get it. It's not fair that she's the only one in our immediate family and our extended family at the whole school. And so I think a lot of our conversations are, she feels free to tell me that she's mad at me and mad at having diabetes. And then I feel free to tell her that I'm mad too. And I'm tired too sometimes. And I think it's unfair also. And that, we just do what we have to do to take care of her, to try to avoid hospitalization if we can. Other than that, we want her to be a happy kid.
So how has diabetes impacted the relationship with your child?
I think for me, it's probably made us closer. When she was diagnosed, obviously she needed a more of a support system around her from myself and my wife. And I mentioned earlier, we kind of took on these dual roles. She understood the disease more than I did on the onset. And then as we progressed through the years, I think I became the one that was always had an eye on her, if you will. We would go hiking, and I would have all of her, snacks and glucose meters in my backpack, and just, that made me stay closer to her. As she's learned about autoimmune disease and how it runs through families, she's very aware that it's from my side of the family, and she's more open to talk about that and talk about what others in the family have. So I think it has made us closer, almost at a necessity, if you will.
I think I've been closer to my daughter also since her diagnosis. She's basically by my side or doing whatever I'm doing. And I asked her, "Are you tired of being around mommy?" And she's like, "No, it's fine. You let me do fun things and let me eat whatever I want." I'm like, "Okay, so as long as you get some sort of joy from hanging out with your mom." And I said, "Can I record it so when you're a teenager, I can play it back to you again when you don't want me near you?" So.
My relationship with my son, I think, has gone through a couple of stages where when he was 5 years old and diagnosed, he was very close to me, and I was taking care of everything for him and watching him like a hawk. And he's kind of now at a phase at 9 years old, he's wanting to be a little bit more independent. And I'm the nagging mom who's always wondering what his blood sugar is and did you eat something because you're going high? And then he gets mad because maybe he didn't and it's just his blood sugar. I would say right now we're a little strained and he's angry. He's really, really angry about having diabetes. And I'm trying to help him through that. And we've started therapy and they're just trying to work with him on coming to terms with everybody has something and this is your thing. How can we turn some of these into a positive? But it's tough. There are days that are tougher than others. And when he comes and cuddles with me and he's real lovey, like I love it. He's 9 and I don't know how much longer I'm gonna have that little cuddle bug. But he's working through his feelings about having diabetes.
With my daughter, I'm pretty close to my kids generally, but I think with this particular daughter, the one who has diabetes, I was the parent who had to travel with her to field trips all over the country and everywhere. And I think that experience, at least for me, was great. Probably a place that parents normally wouldn't go at all. But because I had to travel with her to do that, I think that was a different element to our relationship throughout the last 7 years that I've had to do. And I think that whether it was camping or Washington, D.C. or other places, we've had some really unique experiences in that regard. So, I really do appreciate that. So, yeah, at least I'd like to think so.